The $640 million disappeared at exactly 9:23 a.m., 6 minutes after they fired me. My name's Victor Kane. I'm 48, I just lost my job, and I'm about to watch my former boss learn why you don't mess with the guy who built your security system. See, Anthony Cross made one mistake this morning. He assumed firing me would solve his problems. What he actually did was trigger the one thing I'd built specifically to stop guys like him from playing games with working people's retirement money. But let me back up a minute. The whole thing started at 9:17 a.m. in the boardroom at Hartwell Global Financial. 20 executives sitting around that polished table, and Anthony standing there like he was about to deliver the sermon of his life. You call that an achievement? I call it scrap paper. He slammed my termination letter down so hard the water glasses jumped. Real dramatic, Anthony. The guy always did like an audience. I sat there with my hands folded the way they taught us in the Corps. When someone's having a tantrum, you stay calm and let them finish. Anthony had been building up to this moment for months, ever since he decided that speed was more important than doing things right. Here's what you need to understand about Anthony and me. We used to be buddies. Back when he was just another sales guy trying to make quota, we'd hit the golf course on weekends, grab beers after work, complain about management. That was before the MBA, before the corner office, before he forgot that the money we managed belonged to real people. The $640 million sitting in our escrow accounts wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. That money represented retirement funds for 12,000 families. Guys like Joe Martinez, who spent 30 years on the factory floor. Women like Susan Walsh, who cleaned office buildings but somehow managed to save enough to retire with dignity. I built the system that protected their money. Every safeguard, every clause, every line of code was there for a reason. Anthony saw obstacles. I saw insurance against the kind of corporate greed that leaves working families with nothing. 12 years, Anthony continued, pacing behind his chair. 12 years of you slowing down every deal, questioning every decision, hiding behind regulations. I didn't say anything. What was the point? Anthony had already made up his mind. The board was just there for the show. But here's what none of them knew. 7 years ago, after we nearly got burned by a contractor who tried to walk away with $2 million in escrow funds, I built something special into our system. Call it insurance. Call it a dead man's switch. I called it common sense. If the original system architect ever got terminated without proper board approval, the escrow accounts would lock down automatically. No transfers, no withdrawals, nothing. The money would sit there until the person who designed the safeguards gave the all clear. I never told anyone about that feature. It was buried in the legal code, written in language so technical that even our lawyers would need a translator. But it was there, waiting. Thanks, I said when Anthony finally stopped ranting. Just that one word. The silence hit the room like a brick. They expected me to fight back, maybe grovel a little. What they got was a guy who'd learned that sometimes the best response is no response at all. Security was already at the door. Anthony had this whole thing choreographed for maximum humiliation. Make an example of the guy who dared to question the great Anthony Cross. I stood up, straightened my tie, and walked toward the door. Every step measured, every movement deliberate. Marine training doesn't leave you, even 20 years later. As I passed Roger Mills, our CFO, I caught his eye. Roger and I went way back, Army finance before joining the private sector. Good man with solid principles, but he'd been walking a tightrope ever since Anthony started pushing boundaries. The look he gave me said everything. He knew this was wrong, but he had a mortgage and 2 kids in college. Access cards deactivated within the hour, Anthony called after me. Security will escort you out. I didn't turn around. Just kept walking toward what was about to become the biggest mistake of his career. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding. I pulled out my phone and checked the escrow balances out of habit. $640 million across multiple accounts, all protected by systems I'd designed to be bulletproof. In exactly 6 minutes, Anthony was going to try to authorize the biggest transfer in company history. Some investor meeting, some promise he'd made to Wall Street about moving fast and breaking things. He was going to waltz into that system, expecting the money to flow like water. That's when he was going to discover that the guy he just fired was the only one holding the keys. The elevator reached the ground floor. Through the lobby windows, I could see people going about their normal Tuesday morning. Coffee runs, client meetings, the usual routine. None of them had any idea that in a few minutes the financial news was going to get very interesting. My phone buzzed. Text from Tyler, my 19-year-old. Dad, everything okay? Saw some news alert about your company. Smart kid. Studying engineering at State, but he kept an eye on business news because he knew our family finances depended on my job. Or had depended on it. All good, son. Home for dinner. Tell Grandpa his prescriptions are ready for pickup. I hit send and walked outside. The coffee shop across the street had the perfect view of our building. Time to grab a cup and watch Anthony learn the most expensive lesson of his life. See, Anthony forgot something important when he decided to fire me. Rules aren't suggestions. They're boundaries. And when you spend 15 years building a fortress to keep wolves away from working families' money, you make sure that fortress can defend itself, even when you're not there to man the walls. The coffee shop had the perfect view. I ordered black coffee and found a seat by the window where I could watch the show unfold through the glass walls of Hartwell Global. From here, I could see Anthony gesturing wildly at Roger Mills in the boardroom. Poor Roger looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The guy had served 2 tours in Iraq, managed battlefield logistics under fire, but corporate politics scared him more than roadside bombs ever did. Roger was pulling up the Escrow system on his laptop. Here we go. What Anthony didn't understand about Marines is that we don't just react, we prepare. That safety clause I built 7 years ago wasn't paranoia. It was thoroughness. You plan for the worst-case scenario, so when it happens, you're ready. The worst-case scenario was someone like Anthony getting control of working families' money and treating it like his personal piggy bank. I watched Roger's face through the window as he typed in the transfer commands. First, the amount, $640 million. Then the destination accounts, probably some flashy investment scheme Anthony had cooked up to impress Wall Street. Then he'd hit execute and wait for confirmation. Instead, his computer screen turned red. Even from across the street, I could see Roger's shoulders tense up. He stared at his laptop like it had just caught fire. He tried typing something else. More red screen. Anthony leaned over Roger's shoulder, pointing at the monitor. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his body language told the story. First confusion, then frustration, then something approaching panic. The IT guy showed up 10 minutes later. 2 young techs with that deer-in-headlights look. They huddled around Roger's laptop, typing furiously, pulling up code windows that probably looked like ancient hieroglyphics to everyone else. My phone rang. Anthony. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, same result. Third time I picked up. Victor Kane, Victor, thank God. We've got some kind of glitch here. System's acting up. Can you walk us through the override? Real smooth, Anthony. From firing me to needing my help in under an hour. Sorry, who is this? I don't work for Hartwell anymore. Don't be like that. This is bigger than personal differences. We've got investors waiting for confirmation. Big money, big consequences if we don't deliver. Sounds like a problem for your current IT staff. I could hear him breathing hard. Through the window, I watched him pace around the conference room like a caged tiger. Victor, I'm asking nicely. Just tell me how to unlock the system. Can't help you, Anthony. Like you said, I'm dead weight. Surely someone as efficient as you can figure it out. 10 seconds of silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Gone was the smooth-talking CEO. What I heard now was desperation. What do you want? Money? Your job back? Stock options? Name your price. I want you to hang up and figure out your own problems. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Through the window, I could see the situation escalating. More people crowding into the conference room. Dennis Walsh, the board chairman, had shown up looking like someone had told him his house was on fire. Patricia Torres, the only woman on our board and the smartest person in that room, was studying paperwork with a frown that could cut glass. The young legal counsel, looked maybe 25 and had never seen a real crisis, was frantically flipping through documents. Contract law, compliance regulations, the whole 9 yards, looking for some loophole, some way to override the system. They weren't going to find one. I'd made sure of that. Here's the thing about building safeguards. You don't just plan for technical failures. You plan for human failures. The clause I'd buried wasn't just a computer program. It was a legal contract signed by the board, filed with state regulators, ironclad and bulletproof. If the original system architect was terminated without due process, the escrow accounts would freeze until the situation got resolved. Due process meant a formal board vote, proper documentation, and a cooling-off period to prevent exactly this kind of knee-jerk decision. Anthony had fired me in front of 20 people because he wanted to make a point. What he'd really done was trigger the one thing designed to stop him from playing fast and loose with other people's money. The coffee shop was getting busy with the lunch crowd, but I kept my eyes on the show across the street. Anthony was on another phone call, probably with the investors trying to explain why their money transfer was delayed. His face was getting redder by the minute. Roger had given up on the computer and was just sitting there with his head in his hands. Poor guy knew exactly what was happening. We'd talked about that safety clause years ago. back when we were just two ex-military guys trying to keep the corporate world from eating us alive. Now he was watching it save 12,000 families from Anthony's Wall Street ambitions. Around 12:30, the first news alert popped up on my phone. Hartwell Global Financial faces investor crisis as escrow accounts freeze. The reporter had done their homework. Quotes from 3 different investor groups, all expressing concern about the sudden halt in fund transfers. Wall Street speak for panic. I decided to check my voicemails. Might as well hear how desperate Anthony was getting. Message 1, Victor, it's Anthony. Maybe I came on strong this morning. Call me back and let's work this out like professionals. Message 5, this is serious now. We've got media attention. Just tell me what you want and we'll make it happen. Message 12, pick up the phone. You're destroying 12 years of partnership over hurt feelings. Message 17, this is bigger than both of us. People are going to lose their jobs. Is that what you want? Classic Anthony. When charm didn't work, he went straight to guilt and blame, never once considering that maybe he'd brought this on himself. The thing that really got me was his line about people losing jobs. The same guy who just fired me in front of 20 people was suddenly worried about employment. The same CEO who'd cut health benefits for hourly workers was now concerned about the little guy. Around 1 p.m., things got interesting. Black sedan pulled up outside. Federal plates. 2 men in dark suits walked into the lobby with that purposeful stride that said official business. Roger had called the regulators. When you're dealing with escrow accounts that protect retirement funds, there are rules about what you can and can't do. Federal oversight, state compliance, the whole 9 yards. If there's even a hint that someone's trying to circumvent those protections for personal gain, the government gets very interested very quickly. I'd made sure our safety clause was completely legal. More than legal, it was required under certain circumstances. Roger knew that. He also knew that Anthony's attempt to override the system without proper authorization was exactly the kind of thing that got CEOs perp walked out of their own buildings. My phone rang again. This time it was Roger. I answered, "Hey, Roger." "Victor, thank God. We need to talk. Privately, I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? Away from the building?" "Diner on 5th Street. 20 minutes. Roger was already there when I walked in, sitting in a back booth with 2 cups of coffee and the look of a man who hadn't slept in a week. His military bearing was still there, but I could see the stress eating at him. "This is bad, Victor. Really bad." "How bad?" "Anthony's been moving money around for months. Off-book transfers, creative accounting, the works. He's been using the escrow funds as collateral for private investments." I sat back in the booth. This was worse than I'd thought. How much? At least 40 million. Maybe more. The feds are here now asking questions about fund mismanagement. "And you knew about this?" Roger looked down at his coffee. "Some of it. He told me it was temporary, just to smooth out cash flow issues. Said he'd put it all back before anyone noticed. But you didn't stop him." "I tried. You know I tried." "But he's the CEO, Victor." "He signs my paycheck. I've got 2 kids in college and a mortgage." I understood. Roger was a good man caught in a bad situation. The military teaches you to follow orders, but civilian life doesn't always make it clear who's giving the right ones. "Here's what's going to happen," I told him. "The feds are going to dig into every transaction from the last 2 years. They're going to find Anthony's creative bookkeeping, and when they do, he's going to try to blame everyone else. What should I do?" "Tell the truth. All of it. Anthony made the decisions, you followed orders, but you kept records." "I know you did. It's what finance guys do." Roger nodded slowly. "I've got everything. Emails, transfer authorizations, meeting notes where he told me to move the money. Then you're going to be fine. The question is whether you want to go down with Anthony's ship or help the feds build their case." We sat there for a few minutes, drinking coffee and watching traffic go by. Finally, Roger spoke up. "You knew this was going to happen, didn't you? The safety clause, the automatic lockdown, you built it specifically to stop guys like Anthony. I built it to protect guys like Joe Martinez and Susan Walsh, working people who saved every penny for 30 years so they could retire with dignity. Anthony forgot those people existed. He's going to fight this. He's got lawyers, connections, money. Let him fight. The system's designed to protect the funds, not the CEO. That's the whole point." Roger finished his coffee and stood up. "I better get back. The feds want to interview everyone who had access to the escrow accounts. Tell them the truth, Roger. It's the only thing that protects you now." After he left, I sat there thinking about Tyler's text from earlier. My kid was worried about our financial future, and here I was watching my former boss's empire crumble in real time. The irony wasn't lost on me. By the time I got back to the coffee shop, the media circus was in full swing. News vans lined the street outside Hartwell Global. Reporters were doing live shots explaining how a technical glitch had frozen hundreds of millions in investment funds. They didn't know the half of it yet. Through the window, I could see Anthony in the conference room, surrounded by lawyers now. 3 guys in expensive suits, probably charging $500 an hour to tell him how screwed he was. Patricia Torres was there too, along with Dennis Walsh and the rest of the board. Around 3 p.m., my phone started buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Headhunters, probably. Word travels fast in the financial world, and apparently being the guy who built a system that could stop a crooked CEO was good for your reputation. One call stood out. Meridian Financial Group. I'd heard of them, solid reputation, focused on regulatory compliance and risk management. They were building a new division specifically to help companies avoid the kind of mess Anthony had created. I let it go to voicemail for now. This wasn't the time for job interviews. The real drama started around 4 p.m. I watched through the window as Anthony stood up in the conference room, his face red, gesturing wildly at the lawyers. Patricia Torres was shaking her head, arms crossed. Dennis Walsh looked like he was trying to disappear into his chair. Whatever Anthony was proposing, the board wasn't buying it. 10 minutes later, Anthony stormed out of the conference room, followed by his lawyers. Through the glass walls, I could see him in his office, throwing papers around, making phone calls that probably weren't going well. The board stayed in session. Emergency meeting, no doubt. Probably discussing damage control, succession planning, and how to explain to 12,000 retirees that their money was safe despite their CEO's best efforts to gamble it away. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Dad, saw the news. Your old company's all over the financial channels. You okay? Fine, son. Sometimes the good guys actually win. Does this mean we're going to be okay? Financially, I mean. Smart kid, always thinking ahead. Better than okay. Sometimes doing the right thing takes a while to pay off, but it always does. Around 5:30 p.m., I saw something that made me smile for the first time all day. Joe Martinez, the guy from the steel plant whose pension was in one of our escrow accounts, was outside the building talking to a reporter. 40 years I've been paying into this system, he said. When I heard they couldn't access the money, I thought I was done for. But turns out that was exactly what was supposed to happen. Somebody built the system to protect guys like me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't really about Anthony or me or corporate politics. It was about Joe Martinez and 11,999 other people who'd worked their whole lives believing that if they played by the rules, the system would protect them. Today, it had. By 6 p.m., it was over. I was in my kitchen, helping my dad with his evening medications when the news broke. Tyler was at the dining room table, supposedly doing homework, but really watching financial news on his laptop. Dad, you need to see this, he called out. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Hartwell Global CEO Anthony Cross resigns amid federal investigation into fund mismanagement. My dad looked up from his pill organizer. That's your old boss, right? The one who fired you this morning? That's him. Karma's got timing, doesn't it? Bill Kane was 76 years old and had seen enough corporate nonsense to fill a library. He'd worked for the same manufacturing company for 42 years, back when loyalty meant something and your pension was guaranteed. He understood what guys like Anthony represented. The reporter was standing outside our building explaining how federal investigators had uncovered unauthorized fund transfers dating back 18 months. $43 million in escrow money had been temporarily relocated to cover Anthony's private investment losses. Tyler closed his laptop and looked at me. So what happens now? To the company and to the people whose money he stole? The feds will put the money back where it belongs. The escrow accounts are protected by federal law. That's the whole point of the system I built. As for the company, they'll bring in new management and try to rebuild trust. And you? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. Victor Kane. Mr. Kane, this is Patricia Torres from the Hartwell board. I wonder if we could talk. Patricia Torres, the former prosecutor who'd been asking hard questions all day. I'm listening. The board met in emergency session this afternoon. Given today's events, we're looking at complete restructuring of our compliance and risk management departments. We'd like to discuss bringing you back as Chief Compliance Officer. I walked into the living room where I could talk privately. That's interesting. This morning, your CEO called me dead weight. Mr. Cross is no longer with the company. The board voted unanimously to terminate his contract and cooperate fully with the federal investigation. What about Roger Mills? Mr. Mills has been very helpful to investigators. He'll be staying on as interim CFO while we search for permanent leadership. Good for Roger. He'd chosen the right side when it mattered. I appreciate the offer, Patricia, but I'm not sure I want to come back to the same company that fired me this morning. I understand your hesitation, but consider this. You built a system that protected $640 million when it mattered most. Today, 12,000 families are going to sleep knowing their retirement is safe because of work you did 7 years ago. We need that kind of foresight. She had a point, but I'd learned something important about myself today. I didn't need Hartwell Global to validate my worth. Let me think about it. I'll call you tomorrow. After I hung up, Tyler was standing in the doorway. They want you back? They do. Are you going to take it? I sat down on the couch next to my dad, who was watching the news with the satisfied expression of a man who'd seen justice served. What do you think, Dad? I think you've got options now. That's a good place to be. He was right. My phone had been ringing all afternoon. Headhunters, consulting firms, even a couple of banks who'd heard about what happened. Word travels fast in the financial world, and apparently being the guy who built a system that could stop a crooked CEO was good for your reputation. There's something else, I told Tyler. I got a call from Meridian Financial Group this afternoon. They want me to head up their new regulatory compliance division. Full autonomy, 50% salary increase, and the chance to build something from scratch. Tyler grinned. Sounds like getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to you. Sometimes it works out that way. The evening news was running the full story now. They had footage of Anthony leaving the building with a cardboard box flanked by his lawyers. No interviews, just a fast walk to a waiting car. The reporter mentioned that federal prosecutors were considering charges of fiduciary breach and fund misappropriation. They also had more footage of Joe Martinez talking about how scared he'd been when he heard the news this morning. 40 years I've been paying into this system, he said. When I heard they couldn't access the money, I thought I was done for. But turns out that was exactly what was supposed to happen. Somebody built the system to protect guys like me. That's when I made my decision about the Meridian offer. Right there on the couch, watching Joe Martinez thank whoever had designed the safeguards that protected his retirement. I was going to take it. Not because of the money or the title, but because there were a lot more Joe Martinezes out there who deserved the same protection. Tyler was already back to his homework, but he looked up as I stood. Hey, Dad, I'm proud of you. For not backing down, I mean. Thanks, son. Your mom would have said the same thing. My dad nodded from his chair. Your wife always said you were too stubborn for your own good. Turns out she was wrong about the your own good part. I laughed for the first time all day. Tomorrow I'd call Patricia Torres and politely decline her offer. Then I'd call Meridian and accept theirs. But tonight I was going to have dinner with my family and enjoy the fact that sometimes doing the right thing actually pays off. The phone rang one more time. I glanced at the caller ID. Another unknown number. Probably another headhunter who'd heard the news. I let it go to voicemail. You not taking that? Tyler asked. Tomorrow. Tonight's for family. My dad smiled. Smart man. Jobs come and go, but family's what matters. He was right about that too. At 9:17 this morning, Anthony Cross thought he was firing dead weight. By 6 p.m., he'd learned that some weights are there for a reason. They keep things stable when everything else is falling apart. The system I'd built had done exactly what it was designed to do. Protect working families from people who saw their retirement money as a personal piggy bank. Anthony was gone, the money was safe, and 12,000 families could sleep easy tonight. Not a bad day's work for a guy who got fired before lunch.